morning, everyone. We'll call our meeting to order. First item we have is Senator Kirshen. He's got some pages with him today he'd like to introduce after it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would like for the committee to welcome 4 pages from, I'm here today from Cheney, the city of Cheney, and high school. And I'll introduce them. When I say your name, please stand. Jonathan Majewski, Reagan Hedstrom, Peyton McCormick, and Ada Meyer. And I wanted to add, too, that just a couple weeks ago, the Teacher of the Year competition, Lori Tesius, was a finalist from Cheney. So we've got lots of good folks out there, and I appreciate you. Welcome today, and have a good day, too. Thank you.
Next, we'll have bill introduction. Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a bill introduction 2022 RS 2538 on Capers payment. I'd like to move that.
We have a motion by Senator Hawk, a second by Senator Petty. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Senator Petty.
I have a bill introduction. It's 2022 RS 2765, and it deals with removing that $4 fee on from the DMV removing the $4 DMV modernization surcharge fee.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Senator Hawk seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Anyone else have any bill introductions? Okay, next we will move on. We're going to start out with the Ag and Natural Resources. Oh, wait a minute. Senator Mcginn, do you want to start, or do you want me to have the Department of Ag start out? Okay, but we were just going to do that till you got here. You bet. Senator Kirshen, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and do the report out on agriculture and natural resources.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll start with Kansas State Fair and begin with estimate year 2022. Basically, it was very straightforward. The numbers are in front of you there. The agency estimated revised 22 expenditures of $6.4 million. Of those monies, that they received $2.3 million in coronavirus relief money, which they used for, we asked the question, they paid off some old bonds that they had, completely paid those off, and they used that money to account for the loss of the fair revenue for the year before when the fair was closed because of the virus. So that's how that turned out. And the governor concurred with the agency's estimate, and the subcommittee approved that recommendation too. For 23, Kansas State Fair, the agency requested 2023 expenditures of $66.4 million, including $135,000 SGF, and the same thing occurred there. The governor's recommendation approved the request, and the subcommittee concurred with the governor's recommendation for 2023. Also, I want to mention, we had a good discussion that they reported that the attendance at the fair this year, first year after the pandemic, that it was up 285,000, which isn't the highest number. They've had over 300,000, but it was a nice rebound from where we were before that, so that was a real plus. And the other thing they did mention is they're doing a lot of building renovations, and that was where the old bonds were partly to pay for, and they're fixing some of those up, and basically to handle the fair better and make sure they have enough employees to work the fair when they do it. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Any questions for Kansas State Fair 2022-2023? Seeing none, if you'd like to make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move we adopt the recommendations for 22 and 23 for the Kansas State Fair.
I have a motion, a second by Senator Clays. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Please continue.
Next up is Department of Wildlife and Parks. Agency estimates revised 2022 expenditures of $94.9 million, all from special revenue funds. That's an increase of $3.7 million. Fiscal year 2020 approved amount increases primarily due to $3.8 million in supplemental and requests for record-keeping software and body cameras for the Law Enforcement Division of State Parks. And that is we did discuss that in the committee, and the secretary explained the reason for it. It's for basically safety for the public and their officers out to record and make sure they're safe. And it was a sizable amount of money. I think it was $800,000. And that's what they were going to use that for. All of that is equipment. And in our recommendation, we did concur with the governor's recommendation for that. But since then, we've talked to some, we'd like to take another look at that and in the Ways and Means Committee when we finalize at the very least. So that would be for Wildlife and Parks on 22. Moving over to 2023, agency request expenditure of $97.8 million, all from special revenue funds, primarily due to increased expenditures of capital improvement projects, and they're doing a bunch of those. They're trying to get caught up with all the flooding we had a couple of years ago. Those roads and those paths back around the lake haven't all been addressed, and so they're continually working on those. And so they also had another major acquisition. They bought some electric boats, they called them. There's 5 of them. And what they do with those is they go out to the lake and they can, electric doesn't have anything to do with the mode of transportation. It's a signal they get to count fish out on the lake. And so they periodically go out there to find out what the population is, what kinds of fish they are, and how many there are. And if there's a lot of them, they can retail those to other lakes around the area or around other states. So it's a valuable tool. But the ones they've got are getting wore out enough that where they actually had to buy. They put a bid in for 5 new boats, and they aren't cheap. They're $70,000 a piece, but there was no other place to buy them. This was the only dealer they could find that would sell that type of equipment, and plus get parts for the old ones. So that was another major expenditure, but they did. That's where it ended up. The committee did concur with the recommendation for in 23 as is with the other ones, and so with that, I'll stand for questions.
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Kirshen, when you were going through the budget, did you have any discussion on some of the federal funding that was available for the flooding and damage that had happened a few years ago, and where they were at with that? I think we brought it up in joint state building construction, but I'm not sure that we got an answer as to whether they'd drawn down federal funds to get most of that done.
I remember the discussion. We talked about the damage, and it hasn't been repaired. But I didn't ask for amount. I didn't even ask if there's any money still available on that. We could find that out.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Seeing none, if you would like to make a motion.
I move we concur with the governor's recommendation on 2023 for 2023.
Second by Senator Clays. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Senator Kirshen. Next, we'll move on to Human Services. Senator Mcginn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe I will start with the Healthcare Stabilization Fund Board of Governors. The agency basically had no changes in employees. They have an adjustment in expenditures and salaries and wages, but they are also offset by contractual services that they had a decrease in. So the committee concurs with the governor's recommendation for 2022. Since this is such a small report, I'm going to continue to 2023. And the same thing there as well is that there was increases in some contractual services and other areas, but it had a decrease of commodities. So FTE stayed the same, and the governor the committee concurs with the governor's recommendation. So with that, if there aren't any questions, I move the Healthcare Stabilization Fund Board of Governors.
Second by Senator Clays. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Please continue.
At this time, we'll turn our attention to the Kansas Department of Health, and this is only the Division of Health. The agency request includes $34.4 million in administrative function, $320 million for the Division of Public Health, $3.1 million for the Division of Healthcare Finance, and all these increases are attributable to the federal funds of the COVID prevention and treatment efforts, Division of the Public Health for use in 2022, and the SGF increases due to the agency's supplemental request totaling $3.5 million, including $1.5 million SGF. The revised estimate includes 1,214.2 FTEs, which is an increase of 78.4. Above the 21, this is an additional 12 FTE in the administration function and 69.4 in the Division of Public Health, and a decrease of 3 FTEs in the Division of Healthcare Finance. Of these new positions, 48 are funded with federal awards received in conjunction with COVID-19 relief legislation and are expected to be reduced when federal funds are no longer available. And that question was asked, that these were clearly tied to the federal dollars, and those employees know that they will not have a job unless they apply for open positions. These are case managers, contact tracers, nurses for vaccine distribution. The governor recommends the $3.2 billion, including $750 million SGF. This is an increase of $58.9 million, or 1.9% over the revised budget, which includes the human services caseloads, the hospital employee retention plan, the agency's supplemental request, and the Senate subcommittee concurred with the governor's recommendations with the following adjustment: add $250,000 all SGF to fund the agency's supplemental request for school-based oral health services in 2022. Any questions on 2022? Not, I'm going to move to 2023. Again, the agency requests $3.4 billion, including $810 million SGF for operating expenditures, which is an all funds decrease of $106 million, or 3.1% of SGF decrease of the $6.9 million of 2022. The request includes increases for the administrative function, $215 million for the Division of Public Health, $3.1 billion for the Division of Healthcare Finance. All funds decrease is primarily attributable to the decrease in federal funds for COVID-19 and treatment, including the $104 million reduction in federal aid and Division of Public Health. SGF decrease is largely due to the funds reappropriated in 2022 and not budgeted for 2023. Decrease was offset by the governor's enhancement request of $22 million, including $15 million SGF. The revised estimate includes 1,219.2 positions, which is the same as 2022. Governor recommends expenditures of $4 billion, which includes $743 SGF in 23. This is all funds increase of $600 million, 17.8%, and SGF decrease of $67 million from the federal FY 2023 request. The all funds increase is largely due again to, yes it is again, the governor's addition of funds to expand the eligibility of Medicaid expansion. This increase was offset by COVID-19 pandemic relief funds anticipated to be available in 23. The SGF decrease is largely due to the SGF savings associated with Medicaid expansion. The Senate Subcommittee recommendation concurs with the governor's recommendations with the following adjustments. Add $250,000 SGF to fund the agency's supplemental request for school-based oral health services in 2023. Add $800,000 all funds or SGF funds to increase, increase funds to local health departments using the statutory distribution formula contained in KSA 65242. And for FY23, this is an increase will total the amount available to distribution to 100 local health departments in Kansas to fund the four funds distributed using the formula to $4 million. Add $3.5 million all funds, including $1.4 million to increase the availability of adult dental services provided through the state Medicaid program in 2023. Add $2.0 million all SGF increase availability of early intervention services provided through the infant and toddler program known as Tiny K. For 2023, Tiny K provides early intervention services to families from birth to 3 who have developmental delay. The committee notes their support for House Bill 2250 and Senate Bill 155. This legislation would update the statutes related to the newborn screening, which includes raising the amounts available to transfer from the Medical Assistant Fee Fund to the Kansas Newborn Screening Fund from a maximum of $2.5 million to a maximum of $5 million in any fiscal year. Stand for questions.
Any questions for Senator McGinn on 2122? Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to particularly go on record of supporting your item number 5. I'm hoping that we get one or the other of those bills passed and get it through the legislature on newborn screening. I guess my question is, if for some reason we got bogged down and didn't do that, is that something that a proviso might enable us to be able to get that medical assistance fee fund and get that funded?
That question for me or the chair?
That would be initially for you or staff or the chair?
It could come through in a proviso if we decided to at a later date during the session.
Good. I just think it's important, and I know it didn't get through last year, and I've had a constituent request on that. So
we provide 34 of 35 screenings to date. Is that correct, Ashley? Thank you.
And additional cost on that would be what to general fund?
It's not. I don't think that it's what the problem is they are pushing their maximum cap of the 2.5, and so struggling sometimes with some of the 34.
So we just need to raise the cap, and
that could be answer to or solution.
Good. And then I had one other question, Mr. Chairman, and this may be for staff. I know the state joint building committee and state finance council approved a new lab, and some of our budgets have capital improvements in it. I noticed this one did not.
I have the answer.
So just a question on that.
Senator McGinn.
Make sure
Thank you,
we get
Mr.
that
Chairman.
lab.
That is in the KDHE environment budget, which we just heard this morning in agriculture and natural resources.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator McGinn, I'm reading fast, so trying to catch up. But on the
Can you tell me what
250,
page you're on?
I
Reading
think
fast?
I am on page 15, and I found the oral health school-based preventative services. Maybe it's on 14 as the narrative for it. But I'm curious on all of the enhancements. When I see things like COVID-19 pandemic impact, if there's a federal funding component to any of that, or any of the funds that have been bequeathed upon us that are available to address those sorts of things, if that's been explored, and no objection to it. But as we go through the process, if we do find that there are federal funds that are available to address these issues, I think that should be a priority, is all.
Thank you. So is there a question in that, or?
I think just if that's been explored, and if not,
Yes.
could we?
No, I agree. And what happened on the school base, they got kind of knocked off because of the whole COVID thing. And you have KDHE sitting on the front row, and I think they heard you loud and clear as far as looking for those federal dollars.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Senator Petty.
Thank you. And back to the number 5 on the list from the subcommittee. So when we talked about, as we finish up looking at all the subcommittees and going back before when we put everything together and we talked about having a spreadsheet, would this be an item then that would be on that spreadsheet to look at, to reconsider what's happened with either one of those bills at that time?
Well, if my thought is it's a recommendation. If we go ahead and approve the recommendations by the chair or for the subcommittee, then it's going to be part of our.
Right.
As far as putting it on the spreadsheet, I mean, if you want it on the spreadsheet, we can put it on there. But
Well, it would be an item that we wouldn't have, at this time, we don't have complete information about because those 2 bills are still there, so I would hope we would.
okay, well,
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McGinn.
I think it'll just come up with staff. Staff hears this, that they'll give us a progress report when we package our budget as to where the status is of these bills at that time.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Senator McGinn, if you'd like to make a motion.
I move the committee recommendations for the Kansas Department of Health and Environment concerning health for 2022 and 2023.
We have a second by Senator Clays. Any other discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Please continue, Senator McGinn.
Where are we at? We're on
Transparency,
ethics.
yes, and ethics.
These are the fee fund reports that have been going through Transparency and Ethics Committee. And there's quite a few of them, but we've been staying on track. So I will start with the Governmental Ethics Commission. The agency requests the revised estimate of $723,764, including $470,000 SGF in 2022. This is the same amount that was approved in 2021. But an increase of the $19,485, which is due to the supplemental request to restore the $20,756 that was allotted by the governor in June's 2022 allotment. The allotment funds were used to fund the conversion of the part-time attorney and full-time position approved by the legislature in 2020. Governor concurs with the agency's estimate for 2022, and the Senate Committee of Transparency and Ethics concurs with the governor's recommendation for 2022. So I'll move on to 2023. The agency requests $809,049, which includes $545,603 SGF for year 2023. All funds increase of $85,000 or 11.8% above the 2023 amount. Significant items of the agency's request include the enhancement restoration of the June 20 allotment, enhanced salary plan. They request $79,566 SGF, including $73,472 SGF to provide pay increases after a salary study was conducted by the subcommittee of the commission. Reduction in printing expenditures related to electronic document distribution and house printing. Reduction in data entry temporary assistance. Reduction in budgeted miles. Reduction in postage costs. Reduction in court reporter expenditures of $1,000. Governor recommends the $777,906,000, including $554,000 SGF for 2023. This includes a partial adoption of its salary plan, pay plan enhancement request of the $48,423. The committee concurs with the governor's recommendation with the following notation. The Senate Committee on Ways and Means should review the agency's salary pay plan enhancement request to be consistent with all salary recommendations. So, Mr. Chairman, this would be one that I would suggest that we review when we package the bill. And the point is again, we know we have a 5% possibility out there for everybody. And what we don't want to do is get into picking and choosing different agencies. We already know we have a corrections and healthcare crisis that was presented and out there. But on this particular one and others like this, I think we need to try to be consistent. So if there aren't any questions,
Any questions?
I move that we adopt Governmental Ethics Commission 2022 and 2023.
Second by Senator Clays. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Please proceed.
We're now on to the Kansas State Board of Mortuary Arts. The agency estimate revised expenditures of $367,875 for 2022. All mortuary arts fee funds, the estimate is a decrease of $1,163 or 0.0% below the 2022 approved amount. Agency requests 3 FTEs, which is the same number. Governor concurs. The Senate committee concurs with the governor's recommendation for 2022. Moving on to 2023. Again, basically the same thing. The agency requests revised expenditures of $308,394, same as the 23 approved amount. The agency's budget additional $1,195 for computer replacement, which is offset in reductions in fringe benefit expenditures, and they remain with their 3.8 FTE. Governor concurs with their recommendation, and the Senate committee concurs with the governor's recommendation for 2023. Questions?
Anyone have questions? Senator Hawk.
Two questions. One, is there a typo on that Senate Committee on Transparent? No, I guess that's your overall group. No comment there. Why is there about a $60,000 difference between the 22 budget and the 23 budget?
Yeah. Okay. They had to hire a temporary inspector for 2021.
Okay.
You want the details?
No.
Okay.
No, just wanted to know if there was a good reason, and it was. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? Seeing none, if you'd like to make a motion.
I move adoption of the Kansas State Board of Mortuary Arts for 2022 and 2023.
Second by Senator Clays. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, moving on to the Kansas Board of Hearing Aid Examinators. The agency estimates revised expenditures of $34,000 in 22, all from the Hearing Aid Board Feed Fund. The revised estimate is an increase of $1,884 or 5.9% above the 22 amount. The 22 amount, the agency changed in 22, the agency changed to executive directors. The increase is primarily due to the new director's rate of pay being higher than the previous executive director's pay. The agency requests no FTEs, same as the numbers approved. The governor concurs with the governor's revised recommendation, and the committee concurs with the governor's recommendation of 2022. Moving on to 2023. The agency estimates revised expenditures of $34,000, all from the Hearing Aid Board Fee Fund for 2023. The revised estimate is increased $1,640, 5.1% above the 2023 approved amount. Increase is again due to the pay increase for the new hired director. Governor concurs with the agency's estimate for 23, and the subcommittee concurs with the governor's recommendation. There are no questions. I move that we approve the Kansas Board of Healing Aid Examiners,
Okay, we have a
2022 and 2023.
We have a motion by Senator Mcginn, a second by Senator Clays, and we have a question by Senator Hawk.
Thank you. I probably have asked this question before, and I always forget the answer. How do we have 0 employees, but we still have an executive director?
That's a great question. Okay, because they're less than half-time, and we don't count it.
So we round down?
Yes, so.
Sounds like a
We have
legislator's
0.5, but I
job.
don't think we have well, I've seen some 0.2s somewhere, but
So,
that's why.
thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr.
Any
Chairman.
other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
They're volunteers just like legislators. Okay. Next item we have before us is the Board of Examiners in Optometry. Agency requests to revise expenditures of $197,000 in '22, increase of $25,000 or 4.5% above the '22 approved amount. This increase is due to the agency's supplemental request for unforeseen increase in legal expenses. Agency estimates one FTE position, which is the same as the 2022 approved number. Governor concurs with the agency's estimate for 2022, and the Senate committee also concurs with the governor's recommendation for 2022. Moving on to 2023, agency estimates revised expenditures of $199,618, all from special revenue funds. The revised estimate is an increase of $25,000, 14.3% above the 2023 approved amount. This increase is due to the agency's supplemental request for unforeseen increase, again, in legal positions. Agency requests 1 FTE. Governor concurs with the agency's revised estimate, and the Senate committee concurs with the governor's recommendation.
Any questions? Seeing none?
I move we approve the Board of Examiners for Optometry for 2022 and 2023.
I have a motion and a second by Senator Clays. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Next, we'll move on to the Office of the State Bank Commissioner. The agency requests a revised estimate of $12 million, all from special revenue funds in 2022. This is a decrease of $150,597, or 1.2% below the 2022 approved amount. The revised estimate includes 110 FTE positions, which is the same amount approved in 2022 number. Significant items in the agency's estimate include the following: board member per diem and staff salary increases. The revised estimate includes 2 supplemental requests to increase the board member per diem rates and provide merit-based staff salary increases. The agency has historically reported having issues retaining staff due to part and wage competition with the private sector. Similarly, the agency has reported having issues recruiting for the state bank board due to large part, again, in the low per diem rate. Staff requirements and resignations. Offsetting the 2 supplemental requests are decreased expenditures for salaries and wages. They have experienced several long-term retirements and resignations in '21, which were filled with newer hires at a lower pay rate. As such, the agency adjusted its salary and wage expenditures to account for the lower compensation of these 2 hires. Travel-related expenditures due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The revised estimate also includes several decreases for travel-related expenditures resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. The agency originally anticipated resuming travel in 2021, but the agency reports that the pandemic continues. It anticipates returning travel in January 22. The governor recommends $11.9 million, all from special revenue funds, in the 2022 expenditures. This is a decrease of $162,724, or 1.4% below the agency's '22 revised estimate. This decrease is due to the governor not recommending the agency's supplemental request. The recommendation also includes 110 FTE positions, which is the same as '22. The Senate committee concurs with the governor's recommendation in '22 with the following notation. The committee notes that it has heard the agency's supplemental request for an increase in board member per diem rates as well as staff salary increases, and would recommend that the Senate Committee on Ways and Means give consideration to SB 299 to increase the per diem rates for the members of the State Banking Board. In addition, the Committee on Transparency and Ethics recommends the Senate Committee on Ways and Means consider the agency's supplemental request to fund and provide merit bases in staff salaries. We'll move on to 2023. They request an estimate of $12.4 million, all from special revenue funds, decrease of $344,748, or 2.7% below the 23 approved amount. This includes their 110 FTEs, which is the same as they always had. Again, 2 supplemental requests to continue increased board member per diem, staff recruitments and resignations. We heard that in the previous year. The governor recommends $12.2 million, all from special revenue funds. For year 2023, this is a decrease of $167,156, or 1.4 below the agency's 2023 revised amount. The decrease is due to the governor not recommending the supplemental request, and they continue to have 110 FTEs. The committee concurs with the governor's recommendation on 2023 with the following notes. The committee notes that the board per diem rates, again, as the previous request in 2022. So I'm not going to read that again. Any questions?
Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What are the current per diem rates and what are they wanting in Senate Bill 299? Do we know?
I don't have those notes. That's. So the per diem right now is 35, and the bill raises it to not less than 100 or more than $150.
And follow-up question, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Does that bill only apply to the State Banking Board, or does it apply to other agencies?
This applies to them.
And I guess I would just raise a question with our group of, if this is an issue for the State Banking Board, there may be other boards where the per diem is limited. I know when I was head of a state agency, that was probably an issue relative to my agency. And so I'd certainly, if as you recommend in your committee, if we look at this bill that I assume is still out there, maybe we ought to look at what a reasonable cap might be for other agencies.
Well, I remember this from last year, and it's interesting that, and they're two different cousins, but the credit unions don't ask for an increase.
Right.
And they just have a whole different philosophy.
I'm thinking we have a host of agencies, and I think they all are limited to this same $35 cap, if I'm not mistaken.
Mr. Chairman, is that bill in our hands? Where is that? It's in here.
We do have it, right, yeah.
Is it below
Yes.
line, or have we heard it? It's just sitting there? Just sitting there. Okay, I'm just curious.
I just think we need to look at it for more than just one agency, if we do indeed deal with it this year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Solmtrump.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was an issue kind of on my agenda, not speaking on behalf of the bankers, but for consistency's sake, I would like to see them aligned similar to us legislators. That way they'll all know what we're getting and we'll know what they're getting. And as we get an increase, then they will also get an increase. So set some sort of a standardization there. If it's good for us, it's good for everybody else. Thank you.
I move the Solmtrop amendment to raise our pay to $150.
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question I had was 35 to 100 and some, that's quite a raise. The 35, what does that include?
It's basically, you show up to a board meeting and you get, it's a because you showed up. You took time out of your day to show up. And we had this, I believe I missed the conversation this year, but it's a rerun of the conversation last year. And, you know, one of the things had to do with, say you're on the real estate board or whatever, some people are already just being paid. They already have a salary and they're, you know, showing up. So they're getting this extra 35. And I'm not trying to be biased. They said they're having a hard time. I remember they said they're having a hard time getting people to serve and take time out and that kind of thing. So.
Well, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none,
I move adoption of the Office of the State Bank Commissioner for 2022 and 2023.
I have a second by Senator Clays. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And I believe my last item is the Kansas Department of Credit Unions. The agency requests estimate of $1.3 million, all from the credit union fee in 2022. No change in the agency's budget, although there are several shifts in the categories of expenditures. Employee shift to independent contractor. The agency's estimate include a shift of $46,170 from salary and wages expenditures to contractual services expenditures due to the agency reclassifying a part-time employee from an employee to an independent contractor. Shift in capital outlay expenditures. Additionally, the agency originally budgeted to replace a vehicle in its fleet during 2022. However, given the current state of the COVID-19 pandemic, the low need to travel, the agency decided to shift those expenditures to replace office equipment for its employees working virtually. The revised estimate includes 12 FTE positions, which is the same approved number as before. The governor concurs with the 2022 budget, and the committee concurs with the governor's recommendation for 2022. Moving on to 2023. Agency, again, requests the estimate of $1.3 million. Expenditures for 2023. No overall decrease in the budget, includes a shift of $54,000 between categories of expenditures. The revised estimate includes similar shifts in salaries and wages to continue the account for one employee becoming a subcontractor or a contractor. Additionally, these same shifts from the capital outlay from 22 occur for 23 as the agency continues to shift to virtual operations. They remain with 12 FTE positions. Governor concurs with the agency's 2023 revised estimates, and the committee also concurs with the governor's recommendation for 2023.
any questions? Seeing none?
I move adoption of the Kansas Department of Credit Unions for 2022 and 2023.
Second by Senator Clays. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Senator McGinn. Next, we'll have a hearing on Senate Bill 421, transferring $253,866, $253,866,022 from the State General Fund to Kansas Public Employees Retirement Fund for fiscal year 2022 and eliminating certain level dollar CAPERS employer contribution payments. And we'll start out with an overview from David Wise from the Reviser of Statutes. David, welcome committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee. Senate Bill 421, this would transfer, as the chair indicated, $253,866,022 during fiscal year 2022 from the State General Fund to the Kansas Public Employees Retirement Fund, or it's known as the Keepers Trust Fund. And the transfer would be for the purpose of making full payments of reduced employer contributions from the Keepers School Group employers that were reduced back in fiscal year 2017 and 2019. You might remember there was a delayed payment there of $64 million in fiscal 17 and then $194 million in 2019, and that was layered or paid out through these 20-year level dollar additional employer contribution payments. So this bill would really just eliminate the need for those 20-year layerings and just sort of fully pay off the remaining balance of that, of those delayed contributions. And that's where you see the amendment to KSA 744920. That's the employer contribution statute. At the very end of that bill, on pages 6 and 7 of that statute, on pages 6 and 7 of the bill, there were a couple paragraphs there, 17 and 18, that talk about those actuarial costs and how they would be amortized over a 20-year level dollar payment schedule. Those would no longer be necessary with the transfer of the 253.9 million or so. And then in order to make that transfer in fiscal year 2022, the current fiscal year, the bill is effective upon publication in the registers, so it can go ahead and take effect to get that transfer made before the end of the fiscal year. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions for David? Seeing none, thank you, David. First proponent is Alan Conroy, the Executive Director of CAPERS. Alan, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning. And yes, I stand before the committee on behalf of the board to request your support for House Bill 2421. As David has explained, it was one of those items in 2016, the budget difficulties, and the legislature, as part of their the long journey to help right the funding situation in CAPERS, make the actuarial contributions, increase employer contributions for that, the bonds and so forth. The decision was made, the budget at that time, I believe, the decision was made that it couldn't accommodate that $64 million in 17 or the $194 million in 2019. And so the decision was made to still honor that commitment, but to pay it on a 20-year payment plan. And so right now, those payments are right at $25 million a year out of the state general fund. And so, of course, that would be receiving the $254 million to the trust fund would certainly be a positive thing. The one sort of wrinkle in it is, since the current law provides for those layering payments, those 20 years of payments, $25 million a year, our actuary has accounted for that as contribution receivables. So it's already factored in to the unfunded, the status of the unfunded actuarial liability. It's already factored in to the funded ratio, and it's already factored in terms of the employer contributions. So from an actuarial standpoint, since it's the law, and we know the law could never be changed, the actuary has assumed that that money is there for her actuarial calculations in terms of the trust fund. Of course, the good thing, so those needles won't change if we get the money, that 254, but of course, it gets the money into the trust fund. That means we'll be able to invest it that much sooner rather than have to wait for that $25 million a year for the next 17 years on the one and 15 years on the other. So the money would be in the trust fund. We could invest it and hopefully grow the trust fund by having those funds to that $254 million to invest. Of course, on the budget side, it saves the state $25 million a year in terms of those annual payments, and our calculation is it would save the state then about $172 million over the remaining years of those payments if the payment is go ahead and those level payments are paid off early. So the board certainly requests your support to assist the trust fund and supports passage of Senate Bill 421.
Thank you, Alan, and thanks for the presentation today and being here. And just to recap, it'll save us $172 million over the 17-year period, plus we'll save about $25.8 million in payments each year for 17 years.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Questions? Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have just a couple of questions. I'm looking at the fiscal note, and I'm wondering what the difference is. In your testimony, it says transfer. So I assume that money, if in this bill it's transferring directly to the Capers Trust Fund. When I look at the fiscal note, there's mention of the Department of Education's budget, and I'm a little confused. Maybe the budget director needs to answer.
Actually, he's here, and I believe he's going to provide some information, but you've touched on it. One, it comes directly to Capers, as this bill provides. I believe the governor recommended that it follow the path as originally intended, which would have gone to the State Board of Education, and then they pay it, employer contributions, and they send it to the districts. Districts send it to us. I think the recommendation there is that go to Department of Ed for really accounting purposes, and then come to the trust fund.
And I assume it doesn't make any difference to Capers as long as you get the money.
We'd be pleased, whoever sends it to us, we'd be pleased to receive it.
It may be 0.5 of a millisecond difference in terms of when you got the money.
Correct.
I think in your testimony, or maybe it's the fiscal note, it would be, or the bill, it would be transferred when published in the register. So if we got on this, you could get that money in fairly short order.
That's correct.
There's legislative time and then there's short order, but anyway. So,
Yes, you're correct though, Senator.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Saltram.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning.
Morning.
We know it's about $172 million that, the fund did accumulate or would have accumulated at a 7.75% rate. What do you think the lost opportunity cost has been by not having those funds from the date that they were due till today?
That's a good question. Had we received those funds, and of course, in the most recent calendar year, the trust fund earned 26+%. So on $250 million, and we've had some good years other than that too, prior to that. So you're right. I guess I don't have a dollar to say, but yes, I agree. There have been lost interest opportunities because we haven't had the money to invest, and there have been some good years since this money didn't come to the trust fund. We could try to calculate it if you'd like. Yeah,
An estimate of, I don't need the last dollar, but I'd be curious to know the lost opportunity cost.
certainly glad to do that.
Any other questions? Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I heard you right, this will not change the percentage that we are funded, because you've already calculated that.
That's correct. I guess, yes, is to your answer. I guess if we get it sooner, then we, of course, we'll be able to invest it, and maybe we'll be able to out-invest that 775, but who knows? Of course, no guarantees.
The investment dollars could change that in the future, but we're not counting on that at this time. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, thank you, Alan. Committee, I would also point out we have written only from the Attorney General, Derek Schmidt, and written only from Timothy Graham, the Kansas National Education Association. We have any opponents here today? Seeing none, we'll move on to neutral. We have Adam Proffitt, Director of the Budget. Adam, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, committee. Adam Proffitt, Director of the Budget. I stand before you today as neutral on this bill. I am probably one paragraph away from being a proponent. I'll be very brief with my remarks. It's already kind of been touched on. I'll start by saying that the administration is in full support of the concept of using today's budget surplus to eliminate the layering payment, the $253.8 million. As mentioned, it provides both immediate benefit in the form of freeing up $25 million of annual debt service for this, but also long-term benefit in as much as it saves $172 million over the course of the long run. The reason I'm neutral is the funding mechanism by which this is being paid off. So in the governor's recommendation, she also proposed eliminating this payment, or excuse me, the layering payments in time, but she wanted to fund it through the Department of Education. The reason for that is because, as mentioned, the missed payments were from the school group. So to properly account for expenditures that should have gone through the school group initially, she was going to appropriate the funds to the Department of Education to true that up from an accounting perspective. This bill is set up as a revenue transfer, same net effect, dollars still go to Capers, the money still gets paid off, we still see the savings, but it does not correct that accounting, the lack of expenditures made against the school group back in 2017 and 2019. So if this bill were set up as an appropriation to Department of Education, as was in the governor's budget recommendation, I'd be standing in front of you as a proponent. So it's really a technicality, but it's cleaning up an expenditure that we did not account for back in 2017 and 2019. With that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
So Adam, if we did it through the Department of Education, does that help our maintenance of effort?
It would not, because we're missing the maintenance of effort on higher education, not K-12.
We're good on K-12, okay. Other questions? Senator Hawk?
For a non-accountant, it's a little bit confusing. So is this like 6 of one, half dozen of another? Yes, it does actually make a clearer accounting if we do the expenditure, but the end result, whether it's a transfer or expenditure, is the same thing?
It's 6 by one, half dozen by the other, and for the Capers plan, the money gets there regardless. From looking at state expenditures over time, if you were to go back and look at how much we spent on Capers from an expenditure perspective over the last 10 years, by doing this as a revenue transfer, you would be excluding $253 million of expenditures, both through K-12 and to Capers, because it's a revenue event instead of an expenditure event.
So if we did it, as I think was meant in your fiscal note, it would more accurately reflect where the money came from and how the money's going back?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So to do that, we would probably need an amendment to this bill?
That'd be the will of the committee, but yes, to change it to an expenditure instead of a revenue event, the bill would need to be amended, yes.
And then if I understand this, then it would go to Department of Ed, and then in a few milliseconds, move right on over to Capers.
I suspect it might take a couple of days, but yes, it would still hit the June 30th, 2022 deadline, and we could still make it effective upon publication on the register.
Just curious how that would be done to get the accounting better. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Wasn't this accounted for when it was layered?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
When this was layered, there was credit given already to Capers. Was that not recorded? And I mean, we're talking crediting the Department of Education. Were they not credited when we did that?
So I don't want to speak for the plan, and I'd be happy to let Alan come back up and speak to the mechanics on the receivable. But from a state perspective, we have not yet made the expenditures that we should have made in 2017 and 2019. So I'm talking specifically from the state's point of view. We are missing $253 million of expenditures that should have gone to Capers. If we do it through the Department of Education, now we would recognize those expenditures. If we did a revenue transfer, we're not recognizing those expenditures.
So you didn't recognize them when we did it with layering?
We recognize it annually at $25 million at a time.
But you didn't recognize it in 17 or 8 or 19 whenever we did the layering?
Correct.
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I heard what I heard, I think, is the $25 million a year that we pay in goes to Department of Ed. Department of Ed then takes and pays that to Capers.
The schools do, yes. It goes to Department of Ed, the schools to
It
Capers.
goes to the schools.
Yes, sir.
With this transfer of $253 million, go to the schools then?
It would go straight to the Capers plan. It would bypass education completely.
If we do it the way you recommend?
Oh, I'm sorry.
If we do it the way you recommend, will it then be going to the schools and the schools put it back into Capers?
I believe the answer is yes. I'd like to verify with my team if that's okay.
Seems like that's not efficient.
It sounds less efficient, to be completely fair. Yes, it sounds less efficient than a revenue transfer. You're 100% correct. But that's the process by which it was supposed to have gone in the first place. It is we pay employer contributions based on payroll. So this $253 million would have been X percent of payroll for the school group that we send to the schools as a part of the school finance formula that then gets sent to the capers.
And one last question, the $25 million a year that we've been paying into capers for that, how is that credited? How is that credited? Does it go to the schools, then the schools go back? Is that how they go?
Yeah, it's a supplemental payment to the schools on top of their base employer contribution.
Okay, thank you.
See no other questions? Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate
Chair.
it. Well, committee, that completes our work for today. And if no one has anything else, Senator Kirshen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nothing big here, but I did notice on my packet I got today on the handout that the Joint Committee on State Building Construction concurred with all of our recommendations. Or is that I make a mistake on that, or what did I do?
No, I think on the building construction, it's more into whatever they had as far as expenditures for construction type stuff. Yeah, we did. We've approved quite a few of them. Right, yeah, they come through there, they all do. And the state fair. Yes. You're welcome. Any other discussions? Seeing none, we are adjourned.